As unfair as it is to hear, there are times when the most original and imaginative zombie features struggle to get noticed, but thanks to the camaraderie and passion of the horror community, many undead movies that initially went under the radar, like Dead Snow 2, Night of the Creeps, and One Cut of the Dead, eventually found their audience. And yet, there are still plenty more ghoulish movies to uncover. So, with that being said, I'm Jem from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 underrated zombie horror movies you probably haven't seen. Number 10. Life After Beth. Anyone who's a fan of Aubrey Plaza should check out one of her more obscure films, Life After Beth. In the dark comedy, Zach is heartbroken when his girlfriend Beth dies from a snake bite. When Beth shows up soon after, no worse for wear, Zach believes it's a miracle, but when she starts to behave erratically and eat the occasional person, Zach realizes things were better when she was gone. Rather than becoming a bloodthirsty monster straight away, Beth's transition is gradual, making it funnier and more tragic when she embraces her primal urges. The fact Beth maintains her personality and ability to speak after she's resurrected makes the dynamic between the characters more compelling. The fast-paced and sharply written horror comedy is elevated further by the marvelous cast. Despite the fact Plaza is renowned for playing unhinged characters, this might be the Parks and Rec actress at her most diabolical. Number 9. Little Monsters. In Little Monsters, a failed musician called Dave agrees to take his nephew on a school trip, hoping to hook up with the teacher, Miss Caroline. After the trip is interrupted by a zombie outbreak, the group find themselves teaming up with a children's entertainer, Teddy McGiggle. Interestingly, there are no references to the undead whatsoever for the first 20 minutes, to the point where it doesn't feel like a horror movie at first. The cast is amazing, but Gad steals the show as Teddy. The bitter and vile entertainer has the funniest lines, which the Frozen star delivers with impeccable timing, and yet Gad manages to find the humanity in Teddy, making the sleazy dirtbag sympathetic. Ironically, the weakest aspect of the film is the plodding carcasses themselves, since they look and act generically. However, this gripe is forgivable since every other element of Little Monsters is solid. Number 8. The Odd Family. There's one golden rule in zombie lore that tends to tie every story in the genre together. None of the characters want to get bitten, but that's not the case in The Odd Family. In Lee Min-jae's directorial debut, a zombie stumbles into a small town and bites an elderly man called Manduck. Rather than turning into the living dead immediately, the bite rejuvenates Manduck, making him feel 20 years younger. When his family gets wind of this, they charge elders to be bitten by the zombie, oblivious that it will eventually turn them into carnivorous corpses. There isn't much action in the first half, but it's still entertaining to watch the family willingly infect the town, since it's crystal clear what the end result will do. The South Korean flick may be a comedy, but it's surprisingly emotional to see the townsfolk turn into savages, since so much time is spent fleshing out the characters. Number 7. Fido. Rather than setting the story in the beginning or middle of a conflict, Fido takes place after the so-called zombie wars has concluded, with humanity emerging victorious. Years later, the shuffling corpses no longer pose a threat, inspiring people to adopt them like pets. But when a boy called Timmy takes in a ghoul called Fido, he has no idea how much his life is about to change. It's baffling how this Canadian horror comedy came and went without leaving an impact, since it pretty much ticks every box. It has a marvelous premise, a killer script, and a perfect balance of horror and comedy, creating an experience that's grisly, hilarious, thought-provoking, and touching. The movie is blessed with a superb cast, including Billy Connolly, who's unrecognizable as the titular character. Even though Fido isn't able to speak, the Scottish comedian is able to convey an array of emotions with subtle facial tics and eye movements. Although the zombie formula has been tweaked and reinvented countless times, it's never been done quite like this. Number 6. Zombies. This movie is also known by the generic title Wasting Away, flips the script by looking at a zombie invasion from the undead's point of view. Even though this one has a phenomenal premise and title, the zany parody could have turned out badly. The reason why this oddball comedy works so well is because the infected are unaware they've shuffled off their mortal coil. After being consumed by the infection, zombies perceive reality as relatively normal, even while they're wolfing down human meat. The zombies' perception is depicted in colour, while the horrifying reality is shown in black and white. The changing in colours is a simple but effective way to distinguish what's real and what isn't. It's also cool when the two realities and colour styles bleed together once the characters realise they've been zombified. Although zombies are nothing new nowadays, a selected few have devised a concept as clever as this gem. Number 5. Dead and Buried. Written by the brains behind Alien, Dead and Buried follows a sheriff called D'Angelis, who's tasked with investigating suspicious deaths in the town of Potter's Bluff. Despite receiving decent reviews, it was labelled a video nasty and banned, preventing the gruesome thriller from reaching its potential audience. Rather than relying on gore, Dead and Buried focuses on old school techniques to get pulses racing. Close-up shots are regularly used to give a sense of claustrophobia, and the pace of Joe Renzetti's chilling score subtly quickens when danger is near. Also, lingering shots of needles and burning bodies prove more disturbing than the big threat. Although it's obvious early on that zombies play a part in the plot, it's not clear how they fit into the bigger picture, creating a tense and intriguing mystery. Number 4. Juan of the Dead. In Juan of the Dead, the citizens of Cuba are horrified when the country is overrun by reanimated corpses. One unemployed slacker called Juan sees an opportunity in the mounting chaos and decides to create a zombie-killing business. At first, Juan mistakes the flesh eaters for vampires, encouraging him to attack them with crucifixes and garlic. Juan's closest friends start pickpocketing the zombies, arguing it's not stealing since they're clinically dead. There's also a great scene where the titular character gets handcuffed to one creature, leading to a brawl that's choreographed like a distorted tango. Juan of the Dead is a tongue-in-cheek comedy above all else, but it has enough blood and guts to satisfy gorehounds, including one sequence where a zombie is bisected by an elevator. There's also a surprising amount of political subtext. That includes a running joke where the government refuses to acknowledge the plague's existence. Although the title suggests it'll be a lazy rehash of Shaun of the Dead, this slapstick horror is not as brainless as it seems. Number 3. White Zombie. Though Night of the Living Dead is hailed as the first of its kind, White Zombie beat it by over 30 years. Despite its legacy and influence, the 1932 horror was lost for over 3 decades. By the time it was rediscovered, it had become a relic of its time. The independent horror may be nearly a century old, but it still holds up. The film centers around a maniacal telepath called Murder Legendary, played by the OG Dracula, who intends to transform anyone who crosses his path into a zombie servant. Certain elements are campy by today's standards, but White Zombie is still drenched in an eerie atmosphere thanks to the creepy soundtrack and impressive cinematography. Although the idea that a human being would willingly turn people into zombies solely to be his slaves is downright sickening, this notion is made all the more disturbing by Lugosi's enchanting performance. The Hungarian powerhouse has little trouble coming across as boundlessly sinister simply by performing the mildest glare or gesture. Being the first feature-length zombie movie ever made, White Zombie is a must-see for any horror purist. Number 2. The Cured. What if a zombie could stop being a zombie? Such is the premise of the Irish drama The Cured. This feature-length debut takes place at the end of zombie epidemic, where 75% of the infected have returned to normal. However, the ex-zombies are heavily stigmatized, making it nearly impossible for them to be reintegrated into society. Even though moral dilemmas usually play a part in the genre, the few execute it as well as The Cured. It explores many hard topics including post-traumatic stress disorder, prejudice, conspiracies, and euthanasia. Though the reformed cannibals are sympathetic, the prejudice they endure is understandable. Obviously, the Cured shouldn't be blamed for their actions as zombies since they were literally out of their minds. When the conspiracies grow that the Cured may revert to their brain-munching ways, it's no surprise when xenophobia intensifies. Though the social commentary could have come across as ham-fisted, the innovative concept and grounded approach keeps things thoroughly engaging while still delivering the scares and nail-biting tension we've come to expect. And number 1. The Serpent and the Rainbow. Despite how popular stories are, they rarely delve into the roots. With that said, the mythology is explored in depth in The Serpent and the Rainbow, helmed by slasher author Wes Craven. The spooky drama follows an anthropologist called Dennis, who heads to the Amazon to investigate a case revolving around an alleged resurrection. Soon after arriving, Dennis finds himself caught in a whole world and underworld of trouble. Considering The Serpent and the Rainbow contain no undead hordes, it plays out more like a detective thriller than a conventional zombie film. However, the authentic approach makes the supernatural threat scarier since everyone takes the subject matter dead seriously. As can be expected from the master of horror, Craven injects the scenes with trippy sequences, sickening imagery, slow building tension, and frightfully effective jump scares. Even though it made a small profit and was well received, The Serpent and the Rainbow remains among Craven's lesser-known entries. It's a pity since The Serpent and the Rainbow isn't just one of Craven's finest works, but one of the most unappreciated zombie flicks ever made. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, drop us a like, share, and subscribe too.